Deus, salutaris nostre, Domine ex Deus, Filii ex Deus, Deus noster, Domine ex Noster, Angeli, Orem Domino Maestatis,
Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. It is Wednesday, March 19th. And no, Hasan is not here yet. Hasan is late, as Hasan always is. But More Soul Trust saved all of us time. And I was just going to sit and wait for Hasan, but he said that he would gift subs if I was on time. He did not say anything about Hasan being on time. He just said if I was on time. So, in an overflowing abundance of charity towards all of my viewers, all of you lovers of St. Augustine, I decided to start the stream alone without Hasan, just so all of you would be gifted subs. And maybe, I think I still have subs to gift this week, this month. YouTube gives me free subs to gift. So I think that near the end of this stream, I'll probably gift all of those subs to you guys. But I thought that perhaps it would be a good idea to have a few minutes before Hasan came here, because this is a bit of a part two. For those who don't know, around a week and a half ago, because I've been trying to, because it's Lent, unfortunately, this hasn't worked out as well as I wanted it to. But during Lent, I've tried to keep things more so towards ascetical topics, more so towards spiritual topics. Unfortunately, this has not worked out like I wanted it to, but we've been getting a lot of these done. And one of those was going through a work that St. Augustine wrote on basically an introduction to spirituality, an introduction to destroying sin and growing in virtue. So we went over the first part of that in last stream. So I figured maybe before Hasan gets here, if anybody had general questions about what we already covered, I could answer those questions. Then I also could give a basic overview of everything that we have already gone over. Thank you, Jesus Christ is Lord. Thank you for the super chat. But that is what I'm intending to do while we wait for Hasan to get here. I really hope Hasan did not fall asleep or anything like that. You can help the process by, in whatever Discord server you're in, just adding Hasan, at Hasan. And if you at him, he will get enough notifications, and then perhaps he will remember what's going on. Yes, do not despair. The demons love despair. Yes, we're not going to despair of Hasan being here or us or not being here. We're going to trust. We're going to trust the plan, and we're going to continue. But basically, as a general overview of everything we went over so far, St. Augustine, in his spiritual writings and his ascetical writings, he wants to drill down very particularly one topic. And this topic is a proper understanding of something called concupiscence. Okay, you guys remember what concupiscence is? Concupiscence are those movements of the sense appetites towards sensible goods, kind of like the will is in the order of reason. So the movements of concupiscence are in the order of the flesh, the sense passions. And concupiscence can be good or concupiscence can be bad, depending on how it is ordered by reason, because moral goodness and moral evil subside in the will. When it comes to concupiscence, it's neither without relation to the will, good or evil. It can become good or evil in matter of something per accidents. Like, let's say, for example, you have a motion of concupiscence towards an illicit sense good. Let's say you have a motion of concupiscence, a motion of lust. If you consent to that motion, or there's some sort of motivation that motion brings about in you to make a morally evil decision with your will. You consenting to that evil is sinful. Okay? But as long as you resist this motion, as long as you do not obey those inclinations, as long as you resist those inclinations, then you are doing good. You're not committing a sin just because you have these motions of the sense appetite, right? Now, there's sort of a third option as well. You have a moral obligation to fight this concupiscence. So if you do not carry out your moral obligation and you do not fight your concupiscence, then by that very fact of not carrying out your moral obligation, you have made a certain deliberate choice, and therefore you are sinning by omission. Okay? So, generally speaking, because St. Augustine understands very well the way in which concupiscence fits into the entire spiritual life, he's going to be able to hit it, very precisely of where we need to look to in order to best fight the flesh. Okay, because we have these motions of concupiscence, and these motions of concupiscence, they are the cause of our sins. They are they're that which disposes us towards sin, right? So in order to fight sin, we want to fight the cause. We want to take it out by its roots. So how do we take it out by its roots? Well, we best fight against concupiscence, because desire is somehow going to beget those sinful actions. Okay? So that's the whole idea of what we've been over before, and this actually goes into St. Augustine's whole view of justification, because he's going to interpret texts of St. Paul, especially St. Paul's epistle to the Romans, chapter 7 and 8, and then also St. Paul's epistle to the Galatians. He's going to interpret those texts that talk about walking after the Spirit, and walking after the flesh, and the law of the Spirit, law of the flesh, fruits of the Spirit, and then those works rather, of the flesh. He's going to interpret all of these texts as referring to the way in which redemption by Christ is applied to us, yet on the other hand, we still have motions of concupiscence which are within us, which we need to fight. So if we walk after the Spirit and the Spirit lusts against the flesh, that is, we do not obey the flesh, but we continue on our way, then in this case, we're good, right? We have a well-ordered soul. We are ordered towards God, even while the flesh fights against the Spirit. But on the other hand, if you walk after the flesh, that is, you're ordered away from God and towards earthly things as your final end, i.e., you commit a mortal sin. In this way, you are not in a state of justice, but you are in a state of mortal sin, and you will be damned for that. Okay? So substantially, St. Augustine provides us with a very good overview of the Catholic teaching on all of these points. And that's basically everything we've been through so far. Today, we're probably going to get through the rest of it, especially if Hasan decides to just never show up, because then I would be able to get through this very quickly. But today we're going to be going over in more detail a lot of the ways in which this fits into specific states in life. He's going to mention things like marriage, and then also how this differentiates us from the teaching of the Manichaeans. Okay, I guess I'll answer questions, and if Hasan is not in here in a few minutes, then I will start the exposition of the text all by myself, which will be, Hasan messaged me. Coming soon, talking to Ethan. Okay. Bro, ... Yeah, I confirmed with him the time and everything, so everyone is going to have to bully Hasan right when he gets here, so I guess we're going to be sitting around here waiting, seeing when Hasan's going to show up, unfortunately. Oh, yes, thank you, Masoltra. Morsoltra is awesome. He actually gifted those Scholastic Answers memberships. And then Michael, Eucharistic Prayer 2 Onlyists. Where are you? Where are y'all at? Yes, I love Eucharistic Prayer 2. You are holy, fount of all holiness. We love Eucharistic Prayer 2 when we want to get through our 20-minute long daily masses, especially when they're skipping the homily. We're in and out of there. We're getting mass done faster than we can even get morning prayer through with. It takes me longer to make breakfast than mass does. We love Eucharistic Prayer too. And then Jerkin Films, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Okay, so this is kind of unfortunate because I answered all the questions already, and now we're just sitting here waiting. By the way, if you want to if you want to read the better version of the text that I gave, because some of you know there are some issues with New Advent and how they do headings and scriptural references and things like that. If you do want to, oh yeah, you're never going to be able to see that. If you do want to read this, then it's on my website. If you just go to christianbwagner.com, then you should be able to just, I think it's titled like Problems with New Advent. I attach the PDF to it. So, yeah. What type of fast do you recommend on Holy Week? I mean, it's pretty hard to recommend a universal rule when it comes to fasting, because when it comes to fasting, this is going to be determined by a number of different factors, including your own experience with ascetical exercises. If you're not very experienced in them, then it's not the best idea to just go super hardcore and do like a black fast every single day during Holy Week, or just a fast on bread and water during the entirety of Holy Week. It's not going to be helpful for you. Also, your bodily constitution. So, are you like a day laborer? Are you a construction worker, or are you like an office job guy? Like, what's your sort of workload going on where you need food to feed yourself? So it's going to depend on a number of different factors. So I can't even really give a universal judgment. It's going to take prudence, the virtue of prudence, for you to be able to determine what would be the best fast, which preserves bodily health in your state, but also is going to be efficacious as to bringing about those ends of fasting. My mom won't let me fast. What do I do? Um, your mom is just like lording over you to make sure you eat breakfast. I'm very confused. I mean, if it's really that bad, then you can just intensify your abstinence. Like, you don't need to salt your food. You don't need to eat delicacies. You can still eat all of your meals and eat very sparingly if that's going to be an issue. But it's a very strange. How do I get into proper fasting as a frankly overweight catechumen? Well, you would get into proper fasting like anyone else does. You discern what your needs are, and uh, just like anyone else, just like what I just said, you discern what your needs are, and then you move from there. If you're overweight, it's probably going to be a lot easier because it's going to be harder for you to damage your health through fasting. Like, it's not like you're in risk of anorexia or anything like that. So if anything, it actually makes it easy for you. Um, the drama yesterday was a bummer. On a lighter note, thought it was hilarious you trying to hide your smile when Pope Michael hinted at the Diamonds Pelagians. Wait, what? Pope Michael hinted at the Diamonds Pelagians? Very confused. I think that cheddar cheese and banana go well together. Well, not during Lent, because during Lent you're not supposed to be. No dairy during Lent, guys. No dairy. We're strictly people talk about like, oh, the pre-Vatican II practices. We're like, yes, the pre-Vatican I practices. That's what we're following. Um okay, this is actually a very excellent question. I was just reading about this. I was reading a if you want to read more about this, you can look at the section on temperance in McEwen Callan's Moral Theology. If you just look up McEwen Callan Moral Theology on Google, it's very easy to find the PDF, and then just go to the section on absent. Well, would it be the section on abstinence, or it would be the section on temperance? Sorry, the section on temperance, and it should talk about fasting. But that would be one of the happy effects of fasting. Like, for example, when it comes to fasting, I find myself having a greater degree of mental clarity to do my work during the day, and I enjoy that fact. It's nothing wrong with having something as a consequence and then enjoying that consequence. Like, for example, we can think about how in sacred scripture, one of the motivations used to uh, laud the life of the just and to lament the life of the wicked is that there are good temporal effects of the life of the just and there are bad temporal effects of the life of wickedness. Like, I enjoy the fact because I am married and faithful in marriage that I don't have to pay child support or anything like that. Like, I enjoy I enjoy that fact. Like, the happy effects of living a just life is something that can be enjoyed. So, but if you put that as a sort of primary motive, there can obviously be a difficulty with that. Like, for example, if the only reason I was faithful to my wife was the fact that I didn't want temporal strife, that would not be a very good reason. That would be a very terrible reason for keeping faithful to the marital covenant. How much weight have you lost from fasting, Fatner? I think quite a bit so far, but I'm not going to weigh myself until because I just kind of didn't want to focus on that at all. So I'm not going to weigh myself until Holy Saturday. Uh, has anyone asked Wagner if the angel of the Lord is Jesus yet? We're going to wait for Hasan to answer that. How many calories do you eat for a small meal? Usually, for what I do is I have my one meal and then I have a collation. Usually, for my collation, I'll just drink a beer or two. That's what I do for my collation. I mean, that was beer is kind of just regarded as quasi similar to bread when it comes to fasting practices historically. So rather than having a morsel of bread in the evening, I'll just drink a beer. I've actually found that it's much worse to like it's much more penitential to drink a beer than it is to just be able to like eat a slice of toast with peanut butter or something on it. It is definitely not as fun as you would imagine. But other times, I'll have a little bit of guacamole. I'll have like a protein shake, obviously a vegetarian protein shake, something like that. Um, but I actually like a liquid collation. Liquid collations are in my opinion superior to solid collations. They feel more penitential to me. Um, uh, I remember an Eva lady when I was 19 said my friend's parents should try the Lent challenge because she lost weight on it. Dude, could you imagine if they found out about our traditional practices at Lent and then somebody turned it into like the Lent challenge? It was like somebody turned into the Lent challenge and it's actually just like patristic fasting practices. And you had a bunch of people just for some reason identified Catholicism with like fourth century Lenten practices. That would be freaking awesome. That would be awesome in a way. How should we fast normally if we only eat 1.5 meals a day? Well, if you only eat 1.5 meals a day, that must mean that your meals are probably twice as large as normal people's meals. Because if you can do math, if a normal person eats 3 meals a day and you eat 1.5 meals a day, then therefore your one meal must be the size of 2 meals and your half meal must be the size of one meal. So, by parallel reasoning, that means you should cut in half each one of your meals so that your 2 meal would be one meal and your one meal would be a half meal. Okay? Does that make sense? No, 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 no. There's no soy. Okay, there's no soy in it. Okay, there's no soy. There's no soy. I will go get it right now. There's no soy. There's no soy in it. Okay, I'm going to refute these accusations. I am not drinking any sort of soy based protein. Okay, I'm not drinking any of it. Okay, I'm going to get it right now. Hey, okay, I'm back. So this right here, Garden of Life, Garden of Life. Okay, let me stop sharing my screen. Garden of Life, organic protein, delicious shake. Look, Garden of Life. That's like Garden of Eden right there. I'm returning to the primitive practices of eating just like our first parents. And look, you can say, see right here, made without dairy or soy ingredients. Oh frick. If you can see that, made without dairy or soy ingredients. You see that? Okay. I made sure I did that for this sole purpose that I would not. Ethan, my friend Ethan, actually, that was mentioned earlier. My friend Ethan was literally at the store with me. We were at the store when I bought this, and I told him I looked at the other options, and the other options had soy protein in it. I was like, I'm not drinking soy. Okay, I refuse to consume any soy. I will not. I will not become soy. Okay, I will read these now. It has organic pea protein, sprouted brown rice protein, um, amaranth sprout protein, buckwheat sprout protein, millet sprout protein, cracked wall chlorella protein, quinoa sprout protein, chia seed sprout protein, garbanzo bean sprout protein, organic lentil sprout protein, organic adzuki bean sprout protein, organic flaxseed sprout protein, organic sunflower seed sprout protein, organic pumpkin seed sprout protein, organic sesame seed sprout protein. Okay? No. What are you doing, Hasan? Are you just
Part
walk?
of the consider.
Are you just walking in your house?
Yeah,
Okay, but I can assure you
but I'm about
guys
to have
there's
dinner
no
actually.
soy in my protein mix. Okay, no soy. I can assure you that right now. I am going to beat the allegations, okay? I will be
Did
beating
you?
the allegations. I will take a blood test. I don't know, is there a blood test to test soy traces?
I don't know. Did you guys delay 20 minutes so that you could wait for me? It's crazy.
Yes. Yes, we did. Well, I spent like the first 15 minutes explaining what we already did. So,
Okay.
bro talked with his mouth full. It's so over. That's crazy.
Bro's eating beans.
Bro is you have like dude, you have like family pictures in the background. What are you doing? What are you doing?
What's the problem? That's me. It's me with my two brothers when we
Oh
were
my
very small.
god. Okay. What if your parents just like walk in and say hi or something?
My mom's upstairs. I'll put the camera off if my mom comes so she's not wearing a scarf. So,
Okay. Anyways, this protein is not has no soy in it. I hear the Discord notifications already. This is true.
my bad. I'll turn it off. Thank you, guy.
Okay, let me see anything. I'm not soy. Oh my gosh, stop saying soy. There's no soy in here. I will end this stream right now. Just kidding. We're gonna have to go through all this Saint Augustine stuff. This is my first Lent, and I've started it off simply giving up things and adding extra prayers. Would you recommend swapping to pre-Vatican II rules now? I mean, pre-Vatican II rules are pretty. Yeah. I mean, that's a good transition, for sure, because they're not like overly difficult. I mean, to my remembrance, pre-Vatican II rules are just full meal, two half meals, and then no meat.
In my experience, it's probably better just to think about what all the traditions are and make something out of them that works for you so you can fast effectively, rather than like choosing some historic point in time and aping whatever people were doing at that time.
Mm,
But I don't know. Basically, Christian and I were talking about this after the Lent stream we did, and he made a really great point. He may have said it in the stream as well, which is just like fasting is not like other penances and mortifications that has unique effects. So you should always make sure that fasting is a part of your Lenten penances, even if you don't do it every day of Lent.
mm.
Yeah,
I think I was real for
super
that.
important. You were real for that. Fasting is a unique thing because it's a sacrifice, a mortification, a penance, and a certain expression of present joy. So
Who
and
is
it
this?
disposes you to better, more effective prayer. So,
You can't call Hasan a Shia. He'll get mad at you for that. And that's one of the things that actually gets Hasan unironically mad is when people call him a Shia or a Muslim.
I don't care if people are joking around. I care when people do that and insult my family.
Oh, have you read Juan de Torquemada's Critiques of Conciliarism? Boy, do I have a
Yeah,
video for you guys soon. It's currently in the editing. Torquemada
let's
is
go.
quoted. Torquemada is quoted. And because of his influence at the Council of Florence, we're going to be seeing some interesting ecclesiology stuff. That's all that I will say for now. I'll just hint at it slightly. But we can finally
Um,
get to what's up.
I've I have one point about pre-Vatican II. Please don't do partial abstinence. It's completely pointless. It does nothing. It's completely pointless. It's retarded. Please don't do it. It shouldn't be legitimized. It was one of the most stupid decisions that was ever made. It doesn't work. If you're one of those people who's doing partial abstinence on Sundays, what are you doing? Does it actually have any effects? Uh
Yeah,
oh.
mute yourself. Your chewing makes me nauseous. Oh, okay, he's gone anyways. Yeah, so true. Okay, so partial abstinence for those who don't know. Oh man, how is this a real thing? Partial abstinence is basically you're only allowed to eat meat at one meal, but you're allowed to eat meat at but you're only allowed to eat meat at one meal, and you're not allowed to eat meat at the other two meals. So basically, what normal people do during a normal day is you have meat with dinner, and then you might have meat with lunch or maybe breakfast. So basically, you just skip out on the bacon for breakfast, and you have a grilled cheese for lunch, or you maybe have a fillet of fish for lunch or something. It's that yeah, it's so sad because there was others like the original meat indults that were given. They said, "Oh, you can have meat, but you're not allowed to mix it with fish in the same meal." It's like, who the heck is out there mixing meat and fish in the same meal? Like, who does that? Why would you have a steak? Actually, surf and turf. Basically, you couldn't have surf and turf in the meat indults. It was we went through some crazy periods with some of the laws. But anyways, I'm going to move
Yeah.
on. Thank you for
Bro's
the
been like,
other gifted.
Bro's been like, oh yeah, alcoholic beverages are non-nutritive, but it's also possible to survive on only them for the whole 46 days. Yeah, real.
Yeah, I'm real for having my beer collations. Beer collations are W actually.
They are W actually.
Yeah, I want to
They're
get some. I
very
actually want to get some
helpful.
real Doppelbock for my beer collations.
Yeah, but then that's like a freaking meal. That's so they're so dense. They're so calorifically dense.
It was so bad because every night I was just because I didn't feel like making any food. I would just have a beer collation every night, and then Ethan was also over, and like one day I just look around my room and I just see like 15 cans of beer that I had left, like empty cans of beer that I'd left sitting there from like a few days of beer collations. Not all for me. Ethan was there too, but not all for me. I was like, dang, that's a lot of beer collations right there. Anyways, let's get to the actual text. Do you have anything to say before we begin, Hasan?
Um, the day on which we are doing this is very providential. We all love Saint Joseph. Providential for other reasons that I will not mention, but providential in terms of Saint Joseph for so many very beautiful reasons. And I would really like if you guys could, as you're listening to Christian read through and explain this text from Saint Augustine, like try and consider the role of these truths in the life of Saint Joseph.
Awesome. Yeah, no mozzarella sticks during Lent, which is terrible. No,
Oh no!
not beer Galatians, beer collations.
Galatians. Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh
collation
dear.
is basically
What is the relationship between beer and circumcision?
yeah. So a collation is basically a small half meal that you have in the evening. Because you have your main meal, which is either eaten at noon or 3 p.m., depending on which era. Then you have a small, like, mini meal in the evening that's like half a meal. So if you normally eat, I don't know, like 700 calories in a meal, then your half meal will be like 350. So that's what a collation is, not a galation. Yeah, that was kind of funny. I was hoping you'd put up my. Oh, okay, so you were just joking. Um, so let's get into this. Thinking about Saint Joseph. Okay, so this is going to be connecting in with a lot of his anti-Manichaean apologetics because many have critiqued, both from the Protestant world and from the Catholic world itself. Many have critiqued the traditional ascetical practices of the Catholic Church as somehow anti-body, as somehow anti-Manichaean, and many other different disgusting critiques of our traditional practices. So today, St. Augustine is going to refute a lot of those. And this is going to help us understand better the reason why we go through a lot of our ascetical practices. So, from whom sin depends. Oh, yeah, Hasan, don't forget to mute yourself from your typing and
Okay, I
discording
won't be typing.
and chewing, etc.
I've eaten.
My mom doesn't let me fast. What should I do? I answered you above.
My
Okay,
mom doesn't let me fast.
so my name
Man.
is Hasan.
Well, which one? You want me to give practical advice on his mom not letting him fast?
No, I already gave practical advice, but you seemed like you really
Okay.
didn't answer it. So,
It comes up in the mission a lot, obviously, right? Because surprisingly, even though Lent overlaps with Ramadan, so many people are like, "What do you mean you're not going to eat meat? What do you mean you're not going to eat dairy and eggs? This is crazy. Who even does this? Are you a Buddhist?" You know, it's so funny. The first thing the Muslim parents wonder is my child a Buddhist? Not is my child a Catholic? It's kind of funny. But basically, yeah. So basically, like basically the kid's trying to fast. He's like 17, and his mother is like, okay, son, it's iftar time, and he goes, and it's just like an entire table full of confectionaries and halwa, and like all these different like Arabic or South Asian food, and that's just the starter. So first they gorge themselves on all these sweet treats and like uh, like little pastries and hummus and dates and yogurt. And then bellies full, they go and do a prayer that involves prostrating and profound bows and try not to throw up on their prayer mat. And then after they finish praying, they shuffle themselves over back to the table and they have their meal because the iftar doesn't count as a meal. It's just the breaking of the fast.
wait, what?
Yes, many families they gorge themselves first, then they go pray, then they come back and have the actual meal. It's so degenerate.
This
Not
sounds
everyone does
more.
this.
This sounds more
Yeah,
painful than.
not everyone does this. And the thing is, it is literally painful because during Ramadan, the time you're spending 8 to 10 hours a day without eating, so your stomach shrinks a bit. And then at the end of the day, your parents stuff you with food. You get up early in the morning before morning prayer time, which is like a little before sunrise. And in these families, the parents then are like, okay, time to gorge yourself on eggs and salamis and cheese
Wait, is it
and
salami made from?
porridge. No, not actual, not like OG, like non-Italian salami. But basically,
Okay.
yeah, they make them eat like a ton of foods. They eat a ton of food in the early morning, like before they start their fast, before they pray the morning prayer. And so many people say, my parents make me eat so much food that I can't sleep after that. right? So think about this. The sun, especially during the winter, especially during the summer, you are eating all of your food after daylight hours. In some places, after daylight hours is like what, 6 hours long? Less than 6 hours long? And you have to get in somehow two full digestive processes in 6 hours. The average person takes 4 hours to digest one stomach full of food. Okay? These, like, okay, I wanna clarify something. This practice is degenerate, even according to Islamic standards. And even in Sunni books, there's a hadith that says that a man should fill only ever 1/3 of his stomach with food, leave a third for liquids if necessary, and the last third should always remain empty, right?
What
And
what
there's other.
what did that mean? How do I fill a third of my stomach? Do these people not know how stomachs work?
It's not supposed to be like literally interpreted. It's supposed to be that you understand that you're never supposed to fill yourself to repletion, right? So you're not supposed to eat to repletion. So then there's another Sunni hadith that says that you shouldn't eat too much meat. You should spend time abstaining from meat. I don't know a single Muslim that practices that. There's other hadiths that show that sometimes when Muhammad would fast, he, instead of gorging himself, unlike later Muslims, he would drink this liquid called sawiqa, which is a liquid drink form of sawiqa. There's other ways to eat sawiqa, but sawiqa is basically you get flour, you roast it gently, and then you mix that with water to make a drink, kind of like how beer is nutritive, right? But you make a drink that's like got starches in it and it's water, and then you drink that for your carbohydrates, and that's going to be like the main source of calories that night, right? This stuff is like completely different from what later Muslims are doing. Now, of course, the principles of the degeneracy are also in the hadiths, right? Because there's various hadiths. But for example, there's exact attacks on Lenten practice. For example, there's a hadith that says, "Don't cease from eating meat for 40 days or more," which is very pointed, right?
Yeah.
Very pointed. And there's other places where he says stuff like this as well. So there's these like direct diabolical things against Christian practice in the hadith collections. And Muslims are so ignorant of traditional Christianity that even they don't make those connections nowadays, right? So yeah, basically the point is that the practice of Muslims today, it is justified through appeals to bits of Islamic tradition that can be used to justify the degeneracy. But the actual practical early Muslim practice, and also in their spiritual tradition, doesn't allow this kind of decadence, right? And in my family, we're not. My family is not Sunni anyway. But in my family, we never practiced this. We didn't abstain from meat, sure, but we never did this thing where you like eat to repletion every time you open your mouth, right? So in the community that we work with, in the Tavenet mission community, a lot of these kids complain. A lot of the people who live with their parents complain. Their parents like expect them to stuff themselves, and they get worried about like, oh, but if I justify my change in practice from Islamic hadith, they're gonna think I'm becoming religious, and that's gonna cause me problems later because they think I'm irreligious, but they force me to fast with them. And then there's other Sunnis who say it's other things. But basically, to answer the guy's question about his mother, if you want to fast when you have to eat what your mother makes, right? Just choose not to eat whole helpings, right? Choose not to eat whole helpings and eat more of the stuff that doesn't have meat in it. So change the proportion of the meal. So you're eating more of the stuff with less meat in it. If every food item has meat in it, eat more of the thing with less meat in it. It's not that hard. Just try and make it work, basically. Do as much as you can, and at least try to get in a period of like 6 or 7 hours in the day when you haven't eaten anything, so that at the end of that 6 or 7 hours you can pray in a fasted state at least once a day. That will do you well for the whole Lent.
Hasan, I'm like 99.9% sure this person isn't Muslim.
Oh, sure. I was just saying, like, if it's because it's the same sort of situation.
I'm pretty sure they just have like a white mother who thinks that they'll die if they skip a meal.
Well, again, like during the meals, they can just eat like less of the meat, eat proportions of the things they like less, like more of the stuff they dislike, uh, etc.
Mm. So, St. Augustine. Anything to say about
Let's
St.
go.
Augustine before we start?
I love St. Augustine.
Okay, so true. Let's begin. From whom sin depends. Because we just talked about up here, for those who don't remember, the wounds of sin, so like the effects of sin on us, and how continence stops those wounds. Now we're going to look at where sin comes from. And some indeed, who are used to excuse their own sins, complain that they are driven to sin by fate, as though the stars had decreed this, and heaven had first sinned by decreeing such, in order that man should after sin by committing such, and thus had rather impute their sin to fortune, who think that all things are driven to and fro by chance, accidents, and yet contend that their wisdom and assertion is not of chance rashness, but of ascertained reason. What madness then is it to lay to reason their discussions and to make their actions subject to accidents? Yeah, so right here, beginning, basically, St. Augustine's going to be refuting the position that says that we sin by necessity. Others refer to the devil, the whole of what they do ill. It will not have even a share with him, whereas they may suspect whether he by hidden suggestions has persuaded them to evil, and on the other hand cannot doubt that they have consented to those suggestions from whatever source they have come. There are also they who extend their defense of self unto an accusation of God, wretched by the divine judgment, but blasphemers by their own madness. For against him they bring in from a contrary principle a substance of evil rebelling. So this right here, the contrary principle of a substance of evil rebelling, this is going to be the Manichaean view. This is dualism. So you have an evil principle for evil, and then a good principle for good. But we know that evil is a privation or disorder of good. So we know that there doesn't need to be a second first principle, the first principle of evil, which he could not have resisted had he not blended with the same that was rebelling a portion of his own substance and nature, for it to contaminate and corrupt. And they say that they then sin when the nature of evil prevails over the nature of God. This is the most unclean madness of the Manichaeans, whose devilish devices the undoubted truth most easily overthrows, which confesses that the nature of God is incapable of contamination and corruption. But what wicked contamination and corruption do they not deserve to have believed of then, by whom God, who is good in the very highest degree, and in a way that admits not of comparison, is believed to be capable of contamination and corruption? God abhors the sin he permits. And there we are. And by the way, when we say of God permitting sin, a lot of times in contemporary English, to speak of permission can somehow imply some degree of approbation, like you approve of it. By permission, we simply mean that God does not uh, infallibly restrain it. So, like in the same way that a doctor might, have a shooting victim who got shot. Obviously, the shooting victim got shot, and they leave the bullet in. It's not that they positively will or approve of the bullet being there. Rather, in order not to further damage the individual by their medical care, they do not intervene to change it. So, permission is taken in a very uh, strict sense. It's not taken in the normal, a very loose sense as it is in English. And there are also they who, in excuse of their sins, so accuse God as to say that sins are pleasing to him. For if they were displeasing, say they, surely by his most almighty power, he would by no means suffer them to take place. As though indeed God suffered sins to be unpunished, even in the case of those whom by remission of sins he frees from eternal punishment. No one, forsooth, and that's really interesting right there, by the way. Let's reread that one right there, and you tell me what it sounds like. as though indeed God suffered sins to be unpunished, even in the case of those by whom remission of sins he frees from eternal punishment. No one, forsooth, receives pardon of more grievous punishment due, unless he has suffered some punishment, be it what it may, although far less than what was due. And the fullness of mercy is so conveyed, as that the justice also of discipline is not abandoned. Oh wow, what is this, Hasan?
That's bro. Our interlocutors are so cooked.
I know. Literally, if like anybody read on conscience. Read on conscience.
Oh,
It has
bro.
all of our teachings on justification. It has our teachings on temporal punishment. It's it's such an amazing work. But this isn't the only place where St. Augustine talks about this. But by the way, for those who didn't catch it, what St. Augustine is saying here is that God does not let sin go unpunished. So even when he remits the eternal punishments of sin, he still, due to his justice, does not let and permit these sins to go unpunished. So he's saying that there's temporal punishments for our sins because we violated the order of justice.
A guy here asks a great question. Who would be those people who are saying that sins are pleasing to God?
Um, it would probably be
Do you think he's talking about a doctrinal group or like a moral attitude?
I think it might be a moral attitude. It might be like some things that people may like commonly object, like, oh, God obviously let these things happen, so it must be pleasing to him. Or there might be
Oh,
certain like ancient philosophical groups.
maybe it's like those people in that we have in contemporary so-called conservative Catholicism, or like, my husband wants me to show my cleavage in public, so it's fine. Or somebody who says,
Okay.
actually,
What are
God
you saying?
loves human intimacy. You don't know about this? You haven't seen this, dude? There's an article on Catholic Answers by a priest who has read Saint Augustine's Theologia Moralis, and he was trying to argue that Saint Augustine was saying that it was like a good
Saint
thing
Alphonsus.
for women to do stuff like that.
You mean Saint Alphonsus?
Saint Alphonsus, my bad. Yeah, and he was that this priest, like, it's impossible to read the article and be like, yeah, he's just mistaken. He's just straight up lying. It's really bad.
Eternal jihad. Why? Why do you have to tell me the most cursed things, Hasan? Why do I have
I'll
to
send
hear
you
this?
the article
Why
later.
do I? No, I don't want to hear the. I don't want to read this article. I can promise you.
Yeah,
Eternal jihad, eternal jihad against our own sins and passions. The greater jihad, not the lesser jihad.
yeah, but the lesser jihad is important too.
The- yes,
There's
yes.
a there's a line in the Quran that says, regarding those who do not want to fight, your Lord prescribes something for you, and you don't realize that it's better for you than doing nothing.
Yeah,
Kind of real.
honestly, the every single apologetics article that Catholic Answers has ever written would be worth evaporating into permanent nothingness just to remove that one single article from Catholic Answers.
They have a couple of good articles, but to be honest, the articles I read that I thought were good are like, they still make a serious mistake like that. Have you seen the one article on the Virgin being intact in after parturition? And they make like loads of arguments from dogmatic sources like the liturgy, and they're like, but this isn't dogmatic. This is just an opinion. We're just trying to show you the precedent for the belief. It's like,
Uh,
you guys don't understand like anything, do you? You guys are completely ignorant of how we establish any truths whatsoever in the church.
yeah,
Uh,
dude,
yeah,
that just black pills me to hear about the the Catholic Answers cleavage article.
imagine
Why do we have to live in a world like this where we have to deal with this?
because God decided that it would be better in the end this way.
That is true. Hmm. Anyways, let's continue. For also sin, which seems unavenged, has its own attendant punishment, so that there is no one but by reason of what he has done either suffers pain from bitterness or suffers not through blindness. And therefore you say, why does he permit those things if they are displeasing? So I say, why does he punish them if they are pleasing? And thus, as I confess that those things would not take place at all unless they were permitted by the Almighty, so confess that what are punished by the just one ought not to be done, in order that by not doing what he punishes, we may deserve to learn of him, why he permits to exist what he punishes.
That's
So,
so beautiful.
yeah, so
That's so cool.
basically, yeah, Augustine is just refuting their entire belief by saying, well, yes, he permits them, but he permits them to teach us how evil this stuff is because he punishes them.
That's so, and he's clearly connecting this to the mystical life too, by like the reason the purgative way is important is because by not doing what God punishes, we deserve to learn of him why he permits to exist what he punishes. So basically, we will learn like about the mystery of divine justice, the mystery of divine predilection, the mystery of like why God permits particular evils and evils in general to be. We will be deserving of learning that from him through the mystical life, but only through purgation. That's so cool. Oh, look, we have our first mention to St. Joseph then. That's cool. Joseph, being a just man, desired to put her away quietly, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For as it is written, solid food is for the perfect, wherein they who have made good progress already understand that it pertained rather unto the almighty power of God to allow the existence of evils coming from the free choice of the will. Okay, this is for the perfect understand. So he's literally just connecting this with the mystical life. So great
Mm.
forsooth is his almighty goodness, as that even of evil he can make good, either by pardoning, or by healing, or by fitting and turning unto the profit of the pious, or even by most justly taking vengeance. For all the and by the way,
So good.
this is another
So good.
principle right here that I think is very important, is that for a lot of these theological doctrines, because notice what St. Augustine is doing here. St. Augustine is saying, oh, you have this problem of evil. You have this like theological conundrum, kind of like predestination or many of the other doctrines that you struggle with. But through the very practical expressions of the ascetical and of the mystical life, that's where you learn the resolutions of all of these problems. That's exactly what he's saying. So this is why we venerate pious and holy predecessors and doctors of the church, rather than trusting and reading people who just have really big brains, right?
Well, that's a bit on the nose, considering recent events.
Yeah. Free choice of the will. Thomas destroyed. It's so over.
Free choice of the will? Wait, I thought they were predetermined. I thought there was a decree.
True. This is true. For all these
Yeah.
are good and most worthy a good and almighty God, and yet they are not made save of evils. What therefore better, what more almighty than he who, whereas he makes no evil, even of evil makes well? They who have done ill cry unto him, forgive us our debts. He hears, he pardons. Their own evil have hurt the sinners. He helps and heals their sicknesses. The enemies of his people rage. Of their rage, he makes martyrs. Lastly, also, he condemns those whom he justly worthy of condemnation, whom he judges worthy of condemnation. Although they suffer their own evils, yet he does what is good. For what is just cannot but be good, and assuredly as sin is unjust, so the punishment of sin is just. We love St. Augustine. In the future life, man will have no capacity to sin. Oh yeah, Hasan, what about oh no, we won't have any capacity to sin in the future life? I guess free will destroyed. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's just my jab against the Molinists. But God wanted not power to make man such as that he should not be able to sin, but he chose rather to make him such as that it should lie in his power to sin, if he would, not to sin if he would not, forbidding the one and joining the other, that it might be to him first a good desert not to sin, and after a just reward not to be able to sin. For such also at the last will he make his saints, as to be without all power of sin. So this is another important aspect in St. Augustine's thought. Basically, he has these four stages in life. In the first stage, man was able to sin or able not to sin. This is in the garden in the period of prohibition. And then in the second stage, that is man is fallen, we are not able not to sin, which that could be taken wrongly. But basically, what that means is that we don't have any acts which are virtuous unto eternal life, and that any act that we do have is somehow going to be sullied in one of its aspects. And then once we have sanctifying grace, we get back to that state of being able to sin or not to sin. And then finally, in the state of beatitude, we are going to be able to we're not going to be able to sin. So that's what he's talking about, these various different stages. But because of the goodness of the period of prohibition, God has so deigned to have this period in which we're able to either sin or not to sin, in order that he may bring us as a reward to the time in which we will be so free from the effects of sin in our flesh. We'll be so free from that, and we will be ordered completely towards God that we will not be able to sin. Such, forsooth, even now has he his angels, whom in him we so love, as to have no fear for any of them. Wait, okay, this is interesting, Hasan. You catch this clause right here? Such, forsooth,
No.
even now he has he. Okay. Such, forsooth, even now has he his angels, whom in him we so love, as to have no fear for any of them, lest by sinning he become a devil. It's interesting. He
This is
mentioned
crazy.
that we love
Mm.
the angels in Christ. So yeah, guys, you can love the angels, but if you dare make any sort of act of the will as expression of that love, then that's idolatry. This is real. And this we presume not of any just man in this mortal life, but we trust that all will be such in that immortal life. For Almighty God, who works good even of our evils, what good will he give when he shall have set us free from all evils? Much may be said more fully and more subtly on the good use of evil, but this is not we have undertaken in our present discourse, and we must avoid in it excess of length. By the way, in the good use of evil, this is going to connect in a lot with what St. Augustine teaches about matrimony and concupiscence. So, if you want to read more about this, read on marriage and concupiscence. Okay, so on continence and justice. Now, therefore, let us return to that wherefore we have said that. Gosh, dude, this English is horrible. Now, therefore, let us return to that wherefore we have said we have what we have. Dude, what is with this English? Now, therefore, let us return to that wherefore we have said what we have. We have need of continence, and we know it to be a divine gift, that our heart fall not away unto evil words, to make excuses and sins. And remember, by evil words, he's not merely talking about words which you speak out of the mouth, out of your physical mouth, your outward mouth, but also out of the mouth of your heart. But what sin is there but that we have need of continence, to restrain it from being committed, since it is this very continence which, in case it have been committed, restrains it from being defended by wicked pride. Universally, therefore, we have need of continence in order to turn away from evil. But to do good seems to pertain to another virtue, that is, to righteousness. Oh, I should have changed all of the. This is terrible, Hasan. I just remembered something. I should have changed all of the uses of righteousness to justice, because this is just justitia. So anytime you hear righteousness, it's justice. So he's saying that there's one sin which restrains us from evil. This is continence, so that we don't
Oh, English translations of St. Augustine is so infuriating.
What do you say?
English translations of St. Augustine is so infuriating because they take words that have a technical difference in his intended connotations and they just translate them as the same word over and over.
Yeah, that's why I had to add in all of the Latin terms, because they'll literally translate concupiscence and lust as the same thing. Those translated as lust, both of them. When lust are two completely different words.
One is broader. Yeah.
Mm. So yeah, righteousness. This is a fake word. He's just talking about justice. He's talking about supernatural justice. Okay, so justification, justificatio. This is why, like, it can be very deceptive to read him, because he's saying that we have this virtue, and this virtue is justitia. So this virtue is justice that we have from God, because God has poured out this justice into our hearts. This is the justitia Dei, the justice of God, which he says not that whereby he is just, but that whereby he makes us just. So he is explicitly pointing to a certain virtue that we have, that is a certain inclination that we have, and this is given to us from God, and this is what makes us just. Okay? So very clearly this is just, again, the Catholic teaching on justification right here. It's right here, but for some reason they keep using this word righteousness, which, like, less in a more difficult way does this connect to his teaching on justification. Okay, so the sacred psalm admonishes us, where we read, "Turn away from evil and do good." But with what end we do this? It adds by and by, saying, "Seek peace and ensure it. For we shall then have perfect peace, when, our nature cleaving inseparably to its Creator, we shall have nothing of ourselves opposed to ourselves." This our Savior also himself would have us to understand, so far as seems to me, when he said, "Let your loins be girt and your lamps burning." What is it to gird the loins? To restrain lusts, which is the work of continence. But to have lamps burning is to shine and glow with good works, which is the work of justice. Nor was he here silent with what end we do these things, adding and saying, "And you, like men waiting for the Lord when he comes from the marriage. But when he shall have come, he will reward us, who have kept ourselves from those things which lust." This is cupidity, by the way, so a completely different word than the other use of lust right up here. "And have done those things which charity has bidden us, that we may reign in his perfect and eternal peace, without any strife of evil, and with the highest delight of good." And the next one, "Though weak, the nature of man is good." All we, therefore, who believe in the living and true God, whose nature, being in the highest sense good and incapable of change, neither does any evil nor suffers any evil, from whom is every good, even that which admits of decrease, and who admits not at all of decrease in his own good, which is himself. When we hear the apostle saying, "Walk in the Spirit, and perform ye not the lusts of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. For these are opposed one to another, that you do not do what you would." Far be it from us to believe what the madness of the Manichaeans believe, that there are here shown two natures, or principles contrary one to another at strife, the one nature of good, the other of evil. Altogether, these two are both good. Both the Spirit is good, and the flesh is good. And man, who is composed of both, one ruling, that is the Spirit, and the other obeying, that is the flesh, is assuredly a good, but a good capable of change, which yet could not be made save by a good incapable of change, by whom was created every good, whether small or great. But how small soever, yet made by what is great, and how great soever, yet no way to be compared with the greatness of the Maker. But in this nature of man that is good, and well formed and ordered by one that is good, there is now war, since there is not yet health. Let the sickness be healed, there is peace. But that sickness fault has destroyed, not nature has had. In this fault, indeed, through the labor of regeneration, the grace of God has already remitted unto the faithful. But under the hands of the same physician, nature as yet strives with its sickness. But in such a conflict, victory will be entire soundness, and that soundness not for a time, but forever, wherein not only this sickness is to come to an end, but also none to arise after it. Wherefore the just man addresses his soul and says, Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his returns, who becomes propitious to all your iniquities, who heals all your sicknesses. He becomes propitious to our iniquities when he pardons sins. He heals sicknesses when he restrains evil desires. He becomes propitious unto iniquities by the grant of forgiveness. He heals sickness by the grant of continence. The one was done in baptism to persons confessing, the other is done in the strife to persons contending, wherein, through his help, we are to overcome our disease. Even now the one is done, when we are heard saying, Forgive us our debts, but the other, when we are heard saying, Lead us not into temptation. Yeah, this is my favorite part, is like the comparison of the two clauses of the Lord's Prayer as removing the two effects of sin. Have you heard this before, Hasan?
Yeah. Yeah, St. Thomas spoke about it.
Mm-hmm.
In his
Yes.
commentary, um, he says that the first four invocations are about the goods to be pursued. First, the glory of God, which is inevitable, whether we do good or ill. Second, our beatitude. Third, virtue and merit. And fourth, the necessities of life, spiritual and temporal. Then the fifth invocation, the fifth, sixth, and seventh invocations protect from the non-inevitable goods being lost. So the first one, forgive us our trespasses, has to do with basically being forgiven of mortal sin. Do not induce us has to do with basically like preventing us from venial sin and the development of inclinations to sin. So protecting our virtue and our merits, and then the last has to do with like sed libera nos amala has to do with like all evils globally, so including the loss of any necessities, spiritual or temporal.
Mm. Okay,
Yeah,
this is awesome. This
yeah,
is awesome. We love to hear it. Our entire teaching on justification is just contained in um, the sixth and the seventh clauses of the Lord's Prayer.
yeah.
For
It's
everyone is
based.
yes, for everyone is tempted, says the Apostle James, being drawn away and enticed by his own lust or own concupiscence. Yeah, look, concupiscencia right here, they translate it as lust. Why?
Dum,
Why?
dum, dum, dum.
There's literally 3 words so far that they've just translated as lust for no reason. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be a fourth one here soon as well. And against this fault, there is sought the help of medicine from him, who can heal all such sicknesses, not by the removal of a nature that is alien from us, but in the renewal of our own nature. Whence also the above mentioned apostle says not, everyone is tempted by lust, but added by his own, that he who hears this may understand how he ought to cry, I said, Lord, have mercy upon me, heal my soul, for I have sinned against thee. For it would not have needed healing had it not been corrupted itself by sinning, so that its own flesh should lust against it, that is, itself should be opposed to itself, on that side wherein in the flesh it was made sick. Then the next one, the flesh is loved when its faults are resisted. For the flesh lusts after nothing, save through the soul. But the flesh is said to lust against the spirit, when the soul with fleshly lust, fleshly concupiscence, wrestles against the spirit, This whole are we, and the flesh itself, which on the departure of the soul dies. The lowest part of us is not put away as what we are to flee from, but is laid aside as what we are to receive again, and after having received it, never again to leave. But there is sown an animal body, there shall rise again a spiritual body. Then from that time the flesh will not lust after anything against the spirit, when as itself also shall be called spiritual, forasmuch as not only without any opposition, but also without any need of bodily ailment, it shall be forever made subject unto the Spirit, to be quickened by Christ. Yeah, this is also right here an important thing about the resurrection of the body is we receive that spiritual body, which is when it dies an animal body, and this very resurrection of the flesh is going to necessitate that there is no faulty concupiscence, which is given unto us. So this is like the weird part about a lot of people misunderstanding which aspects of themselves are fleshly versus non-fleshly, and then imposing this on the process of purgatory, which happens when the soul is separated from the body. So like a lot of times people will think that basically like these bad motions of concupiscence, which are from the flesh, these bad movements of concupiscence are healed in purgatory. That's just completely false. They're removed in the resurrection of the body.
I'm just still lost in how cool his exegesis of Luke 12 was.
Yeah, well, that's because St. Augustine is the greatest of the fathers.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Therefore, these two things.
Imagine it being said to Saint Joseph, "Let your loins be girt and your lamps burning." Isn't that what he did? Isn't that what happened to him? No one can be continent except by their Lord. Yeah, well, how did a man who was not conceived without original sin not have the moral need to request the marital debt, except if God gave him a special gift?
The special gift of continence.
Yeah.
True.
And the burning lamp as well. Burning lamp of justice.
True. Everyone continue to remember St. Joseph while I read.
This is so good. I love St. Augustine so much, bro. This is beautiful.
St. Augustine's awesome with basically. I'll also another work. Lent next year we go through the entire Moralio and Job. That we would literally be streaming for like 10 hours a day and probably not finish it through the entirety of Lent. But
Yeah.
Moralia on Job, I've been reading it every single evening. Unfortunately, I've been distracted by temporal concerns during the evening, so I haven't been able to read it at length. So I don't think I'll finish the entire thing before Lent. But this right here is just the second and third volumes of the Moralio and Job. And I mean, Moralio and Job is basically like if you read Moralio and Job, it's basically on continence, like applied to the entirety of the spiritual life, like very extensively in the form of exegeting the book of Job according to the literal and spiritual senses. It's such an awesome work, which is why all of the medievals got their basic moral education by studying in detail the Moralio and Job. Really, you only need the Summa, the Moralio and Job in the Bible, and then you're good. That's all you need to study. Okay, so therefore, these two things, which are now opposed the one to the other within us, since we exist in both, let us pray and endeavor that they may agree. For we ought not to think the one of them an enemy, but the fault, whereby the flesh lusts against the spirit. And this, when healed, will itself cease to exist, and either substance will be safe, and no strife between either. Yeah, this is another important part. This completely distinguishes us from any sort of accusations of Manichaeanism. We don't think it's the flesh that is evil. We don't think it's like the body as body which is evil. We think that there is simply fleshly concupiscence that is present and that is somehow tainting, or it's a sickness in the flesh. Like, for example, when you're sick and you have like cancer or something, obviously it's not your body which is evil. It's the sickness. It's the disease destroying the body, which is evil in the medical order. So, for example, when we make certain statements about marital continence, restraining, not acting in a bestial way when it comes to the requesting of the marital debt. This isn't because we think that sex is bad. It's something which is good. Rather, it's the fault which is attached to the flesh, which is bad. Okay? And that's a very, very, very important distinction to make. So this basically completely removes any of the weird accusations of anti-body or somehow the fact that the church has abandoned this view of the body, because as long as the church continues to teach her traditional teaching on concupiscence, which she does, and St. John Paul II was one of the greatest modern exponents of this teaching. As she continues to do this, we're going to have to retain exactly what St. Augustine says right here. Yo, you're reading St. Augustine's Confessions for Lent. Awesome. That's awesome. I love to hear it. I'm so glad to hear that. I used to read St. Augustine's Confessions every single year, but I think it's been like almost 2 years since I've read it. So I'm due for another reading. Okay, so let's continue. Let us hear the apostle. I know, says he, that there dwells not in me, that is, in my flesh, any good. This certainly, he says, that the fault of the flesh in a good thing is not. Oh, okay, that's awesome. I know that there dwells not in me, that is, in my flesh, any good. Notice in. That's really cool. He's pointing the preposition right there in his exegesis. This certainly, he says, that the fault of the flesh in a good thing is not good. And when this shall have ceased to exist, it will be flesh. But it will not be now corrupted or faulty flesh. And yet that this pertains to our nature, the same teacher shows by saying, first, I know that there dwells not in me, in order to expound which he added, that is, in my flesh, any good. Therefore he says that his flesh is himself. It is not then itself that is our enemy, and when its faults are resisted, itself is loved, because itself is cared for. For no one ever hated his own flesh, as the apostle himself says. And in another place he says, so then I myself with the mind serve the law of God, but with my flesh the law of sin. Let them hear that have ears. So then I myself, I with the mind, I with the flesh. But with the mind I serve the law of God, but with the flesh the law of spirit. How with the flesh the law of sin? Was it at all by consenting unto fleshly lust, concupiscence? Far be it. But by having their motions of desires which he would not have, and yet had. But by not consenting to them, with the mind he served the law of God, and kept his members from becoming weapons of sin. Finally, there will be an end of fighting. There are therefore in us evil desires, by consenting not unto which we live not ill. There are in us lusts, concupiscences of sin, but not obeying, by obeying not, which we perfect. Oh my goodness. There are in us concupiscences of sins, by obeying not, which we perfect not evil, but by having them do not as yet perfect good. By not obeying them, we do not perfect evil. By having them, we do not perfect good. The apostle shows both, that neither is good here perfected, where evil is so lusted after, nor evil here perfected, where such concupiscence is not obeyed. The one, forsooth, he shows when he says, to will is present with me, but to perfect goods is not. The other, when he says, walk in the Spirit, and perfect not the lusts of the flesh. For neither in the former place does he say that to do good is not with him, but to perfect. Nor here does he say, have not lusts of the flesh, but perfect not. Therefore, there takes place in us evil lusts, concupiscences, when that pleases which is not lawful. but they are not perfected when evil lusts are restrained by the mind serving the law of God, and good takes place when that which wrongly pleases takes not place through the good delight prevailing. But the perfection of good is not fulfilled, so long as by the flesh serving the law of sin, evil lust entices, and although it be restrained, is not moved. For there would be no need for it to be restrained were it not moved. There will at some time also the perfection of good. When the destruction of evil, the one will be highest, the other will be no more. And if we think that this is to be hoped for in this mortal state, we are deceived. For it shall be then when death shall not be, and it shall be there where shall be life eternal. For in that world and in that kingdom there shall be the highest good, no evil. When there shall be, and where there shall be, highest love of wisdom, no labor of continence. Therefore the flesh is not evil, if it be void of evil, that is, of fault, whereby man was rendered faulty, not made ill, but himself making. For on either part, that is, both soul and body, being made good by the good God, himself made the evil, whereby he was made evil, from the guilt of which evil, being already also set free through forgiveness, that he may not think what he has done to be light, he yet wars with his own fault through continence. Okay, this is one of the reasons that he gives right here for why God permits us to still have concupiscence after we've been forgiven through baptism. It says, from the guilt of which evil being already also set free through forgiveness, that he may not think what he has done to be light, he yet wars with his own fault through continence. It's basically to show the true evil of sin. But far be it that there be any faults in such as reign in that peace which shall be hereafter, since in this state of war there are lessened daily in such as making progress, not sins only, but the very lusts also, with which not by consenting we strive, and by consenting unto which we sin. Do you have anything to say, Hasan?
No, I'm thinking about this. This is really cool stuff. Maybe I'll have stuff to say in a bit.
Okay. Just checking to see if there's any questions. Okay, good. The grace of the Redeemer restores more abundantly the gifts lost through fault. That therefore the flesh lusts against the Spirit, that there dwells not in our flesh good, that the law in our members is opposed to the law of the mind, is not a mingling of two natures caused by contrary principles, but a division of one against itself, caused through desert of sin. We were not so in Adam, before that nature, having listened to and followed its deceiver, had despised and offended its creator. That is, not the former life of man created, but the latter punishment of man condemned. So obviously, the lusting of the flesh against the spirit comes from the fall. From which condemnation, when set free by grace through Jesus Christ, being free, they contend with their punishment, having received not as yet full salvation, but already a pledge of salvation. But when not set free, they are both guilty by reason of sins and involved in punishments. But after this life, for the guilty, there will remain forever punishment for their crime. For the free, there will no more remain forever either crime or punishment. But the good substances, spirit and flesh, will continue forever, which God, who is good and incapable of change, created good, although capable of change. But they will continue having been changed for the better, never from this time to be changed for the worse. All evil being utterly destroyed, both what man has unjustly done and what he has justly suffered. And these two kinds of evil perishing utterly, whereof the one is of iniquity going before, the other of unhappiness following after. The will of man will be upright, without any depravity. There it will be clear and plain to all, what now many of the faithful believe. You understand that evil is not a substance, but that as a wound in a body, so in a substance, which has made itself faulty, it has begun to exist when the disease has commenced, and ceases to exist in it when the healing has been perfected. Therefore, all evil, having arisen from us, and having been destroyed in us, our good also having been increased and perfected unto the height of most happy incorruption and immortality, of what kind shall either of our substances be? For as much as now, in this corruption and mortality, when as yet the corruptible body weighs down the soul, and what the apostle says, the body is dead by reason of sin, yet the same himself bears such witness unto our flesh, that is, to our lowest and earthly part, as to say, what I made mention of a little above, no one ever hated his own flesh, and to add straightway, but nourishes and cherishes it, as also Christ the church. The word of the Lord confounds the delirious Manichaeans. I say not, therefore, with what error, but with what utter madness do the Manichees attribute our flesh to some, I know not what, fabled race of darkness, which they will have has had its own nature, without any beginning ever evil. Whereas the true teacher exhorts men to love their own wives by the pattern of their own flesh, and exhorts them unto this very thing by the pattern also of Christ in the church. Lastly, we must call to mind the whole place itself of the epistle of the apostles, relating greatly unto the matter in hand. Husbands, says he, love your wives as Christ also loved the church, and delivered himself up for it, that he might sanctify it, cleansing it by the laver of the water in the word, that he might set forth unto himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it may be holy and unspotted. So, says he, husbands also ought to love their wives as their own bodies. Whoever loves his wife loves himself. Then he adds what we have already made mention of. For no man ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, as also Christ the church. What say the madness of most impure impiety in answer to these things? What say ye in answer to these things, ye Manichees, ye who wish to bring in upon us, as if out of the epistles of the apostles, two natures without beginning, one of good, the other of evil, and will not listen to the epistles of the apostles, that they may correct you from the sacrilegious perverseness? As ye read, the flesh lusts against the spirit, and there dwells not in my flesh any good. So read ye, no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, as also Christ the church. And ye read, I see yet another law in my members, opposed to the law of my mind. So read ye, as Christ loved the church, so also ought men to love their own wives, as their own bodies. Be not ye crafty in the former witnesses of Holy Scripture, and deaf in the latter, and you shall be correct in both. For if you receive the latter as right is, you will endeavor to understand the former also as truth is. Okay, Hasan, do you want to get into the mystical relations of
Uh,
the spirit and the flesh?
with marriage.
Yeah, because they're.
Where
I
do you
know,
even
but
start?
it works so good with what's being said here, but it's a bit controversial.
It's not just controversial, but it's such a vast topic, and as we've both stated a few times, the principal and most important analogy for the life of the Trinity and man's relation to God by grace is marriage, the union of man and woman.
Yeah.
And this is like the OG theology of the body stuff, basically, right?
Mm.
So this is one of the reasons why when people say that John Paul II was like this like rebellion against Augustinian Manichaeanism, or whatever stupid garbage people have to say, it's so frustrating because it's literally look, it's right here, right? Uh, Basically, like, do you remember that text you sent once about the subjection of the body to the mind and the subjection of the woman to the man?
Yeah. I'm literally thinking of right now. Saint
Trying to
Augustine's
remember where it is.
exegesis. I'm thinking of Saint Augustine's exegesis of John chapter 4.
Yeah, me
A
too. I
woman,
was
a
I was
woman
gonna
hates
bring
her
that up.
husband. A woman, because
Yeah,
really, for those who don't know, traditionally, And I guess I can. I kind of want to stop there because we're about an hour and a half in. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I can take that away. But traditionally, when we regard, and this helps us with understanding a lot of things about the marital state, the woman is regarded as to the flesh as the husband is to the reason, because women excel men in concupiscence. I'm not using concupiscence in a very negative sense, but simply in when it comes to
In
like,
nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically like sensoriness
You
or
can you can consider it like the proximity of the mind to the senses,
yeah.
right?
Whereas the
There's
husbands
there's a
husbands
deeper intimacy. Yeah.
husbands prevail in reason. So that's the traditional
Hmm.
relation. So like Christ is to the church as the husband is to the wife, as the upper faculties are to the lower faculties. That's generally how the mystical interpretations go. So
Yeah, and you can both you can look at the relation of the soul to the body, the mental powers to the bodily powers within the soul. And in St. Augustine on John 4, St. Thomas quotes it in his commentary on John 4. He says, there he makes the connection between intellect and will. He says the husband is the intellect. When he says to the woman, "Go and fetch your husband," he says, go and fetch erring reason, so that the will can be purified. Basically,
mhm. Yeah, and
just super
you can
cool.
just look on. I'm trying to find the specific section in the tractates on John, but like when Saint Augustine interprets "call your husband," St. Augustine's like, well, what else do you understand about this than call your reason? And
Hmm.
it basically has to do, yeah, it's this paragraph right here, this paragraph 19.
Let's go.
Yeah, I might actually we just want to read through this. I want to make sure um, that it's only that paragraph. I don't want to have to read, like half the freaking tractate just to get through this. Um, uh, Wherefore, my brethren, let us hear and understand what is that the Lord says to the woman, call your husband. And then also, like all of this, there's a connection that could be made with like the order of the household and the role of the husband in the household, but some of those applications get a little bit controversial. So some of those we can't exactly talk about publicly. Um, by reason of scandal. But for it may be that he is saying also to our soul, call your husband. Let us inquire also concerning the soul's husband. Why is not Jesus himself already the soul's real husband? Let the understanding be present, since what we are about to say can hardly be apprehended but by attentive hearers. Exactly. Be attentive hearers, guys. Therefore, let the understanding be present to apprehend, and perhaps that same understanding will be found to be the husband of the soul. Now Jesus, seeing that the woman did not understand, and willing her to understand, says to her, call your husband. For the reason why you know not what I say is because your understanding is not present. I am speaking after the spirit, and you are hearing after the flesh. See right here, the husband is as to the spirit, the wife as to the flesh. The things which I relate neither to the pleasure of the ears, nor to the eyes, nor to the smell, nor to the taste, nor to the touch. By the mind alone are they received. By the understanding alone are they drawn up. That understanding is not with you. How can you apprehend what I am saying? Call your husband. Bring your understanding forward. What is it for you to have a soul? It is not much, for a beast has a soul. Wherein are you better than the beast? In having understanding, which the beast has not. Then what is call your husband? Thou dost not apprehend me. You do not understand me. I am speaking to you of the gift of God, and your thought is of the flesh. You wish not to thirst in a carnal sense, but I am addressing myself to the spirit. Your understanding is absent. Call your husband. Be not as the horse and mule, which have no understanding. Therefore, my brethren, to have a soul and not to have understanding, that is, not to use it, not to live according to it, is a beast's life. For we have somewhat in common with the beasts, that by which we live in the flesh. But it must be ruled by the understanding. For the motions of the soul which moves after the flesh and longs to run unrestrainedly loose after carnal delights, are ruled over by the understanding, which is to be called the husband, that which rules, or that which is ruled. Without doubt, when the life is well ordered, the understanding rules the soul, for itself belongs to the soul. Notice right here, really here, and this is what Hasan was saying with in terms of the will. The will, and he's kind of using the word will for soul here. The will is going to be that which, like, our order, our choices, what we place our end in, etc. So the will can either be ruled by the understanding, that is, the you can think about it like this: the household is ordered towards the rule of the husband, the understanding, the application to an end, or it's ruled after the wife, that is the motions of carnal pleasure. So the question is, will the understanding rule the soul and submit the flesh to itself, or will the flesh rule the soul and make us like unto beasts and eliminate the understanding? This is like he's tying together all of the different the mystical aspects here. But for the understanding is not something other than the soul, but a thing of the soul, as the eye is not something other than the flesh, but a thing of the flesh. But while the eye is a thing of the flesh, yet it alone enjoys the light, and the other fleshly members may be steeped in light, but they cannot feel the light. The eye alone is both bathed in it and enjoys it. Thus, in our soul, there is something called the understanding. This something of the soul, which is called understanding in mind, is enlightened by the higher light. That higher light is obviously the light of grace. Now, that higher light by which the human mind is enlightened is God, for that was the true light which enlightens every man coming into the world. Such a light was Christ. Such a light was speaking with the woman. Yet she was not present with the understanding, to have it enlightened with that light, not merely to have it shed upon it, but to enjoy it. Therefore the Lord said, call your husband, as if he were to say, I wish to enlighten, and yet there is not here whom I may enlighten. Bring hitherto the understanding, through which you may be taught, by which you may be ruled. Thus put the soul without the understanding for the woman. And having understanding is having the husband. But this husband does not rule the wife well, except when he is ruled by the higher. For the head of the woman is the man, but the head of the man is Christ. The head of the man was talking with the woman, and the man was not present. And so the Lord, as if he said, bring hither your head, that he may receive his head, says, call your husband and come thither. That is, be here, be present. For you are as absent, while you understand not the voice of truth here present. Be present here, but not alone. Be here with your husband. This is also important. An important reflection in the ascetical life is the role of considerations when it comes to the way in which we progress in destroying vice. Because really, the way in which we progress in destroying vice is to order the will towards its proper end by the consideration of the various aspects of goodness of something and the evil of the opposite vices, and then presenting these to the will. And therefore, the husband of the soul, that is the understanding, is ruling over us. It's ruling over the flesh and is ordering it towards its end. But yeah, is there anything you wanted to say to this, Hasan?
No, I have a couple of thoughts, but I'll save them for a minute.
You want to save them for? I mean, I don't need to go ASAP. Like I can still stay here for longer. I just didn't want to.
All right, just want to continue reading to get more material. Yeah. Well, I think the main thing for me is that, like, I mean, where do we even start? Like, the marital analogy in scripture is like the richest one. So I'm trying to think of like what would actually be the best to pull out here. But I mean, really, this got me thinking about what the CCC says about purity and continence, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the things it mentions is that purity and continence are connected. It quotes the verse from Wisdom. I thought that continence arose from one's own powers, which I did not recognize in myself. or was foolish enough not to know that no one can be continent unless you grant it, right?
Mhm.
This kind of reminds the part that this reminds me of is where it talks about the exterior effects of purity. So one of the lines in the Catechism explicitly says, "Puritas Christianam purificationem socialis atmospherae postulat." I quote it in Latin because the English in this section is really bad and misleading, kind of like with the Augustine text. So what it's saying is Christian purity, like real Christian purity, postulates the purification of the social atmosphere or social environment, right? Meaning that actual purity doesn't end inside you. Just like with a marriage, the goods are exterior fruits, right? And
Mhm.
so the Christian purification by the grant of divine continence of the marriage, so to speak, between your powers, your mind and your body, your mind and your bodily powers, your soul and your body, your intellect and your will, the rectification of those relations and the bringing about of a new unity of grace and the Holy Spirit between those powers makes it so that their fruitfulness is changed too. So real Christian purity, just as the purification and bringing of grace into the relation between the intellect and the will overflows into the particular moral powers, right, and the moral life in general. Just as a good marriage overflows and becomes like a source of the creation of good customs in the whole of society, even if they don't have children, right? The marriage society generates good custom for society. Similarly, Christian purity ought to have exterior effects on the social environment. So, real Christian purity, the humility with which it is undertaken, the joy with which the joy that we show that we have that doesn't come from the mere fulfillment of concupiscible appetites, etc. As St. Paul says, let your modesty be shown before all in connection with joy. The point that this is kind of connected to what I think St. Augustine is talking about in our text, because when we are developing this love between the body and the soul within the self, when we are purifying this love, we're bringing about the proper hierarchical relation and also the mutual dignity and equality of the two. Just as with man and woman, both are rational animals, but one is hierarchically subordinated to one another because of the difference in the body. So also within the soul, as St. Augustine says, the flesh is still me and the mind is still me, but they're unequal, like among themselves in a certain respect.
Mhm.
And the fruitfulness of the reordering of this hierarchical relation exteriorly is the point. It's the point. Like he says, gird your loins and let the lamp shine brightly, right? With good works. So in the same way, marriage also ought to have its loins girded and its lamp shining brightly for others. And we ought to be pure in ourselves so that we shine a light and purify the social atmosphere, right? So we are supposed to have, every Christian is supposed to have a transformative and purificative effect on the environment around him. Each one of us is supposed to have this effect. We also have to remember what the text says right after that in the Catechism, which again I think is connected. It says that there is a distinction. It says that we should consider modesty as protecting both the love of persons and the mystery of the persons in themselves. Why? It encourages patience and moderation. Okay, so the patience and moderation is in amores relatione, in loving relations, right? It says that, and it requires that the conditions for the definitive giving and commitment of man and woman to one another be fulfilled. modesty is, it says that modesty is decency. The term which is used is not decency, it's pudor, which means purity is one and the same as modesty. Pudor est modestia. Vestium inspirat electionem, meaning basically it inspires the election of clothing. Okay? So what it says then, which I think is really cool, is about the connection between this and the testimony of the faith. Because one of the points that it makes is that modesty or purity, it makes us. It says that it makes a testimony. Let me try and find the text specifically. Protects, inspires, tuition. My bad. Sorry for the stupid wait.
That's a night moment. Dead air.
Yeah, okay. I lost one of the quotes. It's Jova. Inspires this. It keeps this. There's a part where it explicitly says that it bears witness. Let me try and find the part it mentions. There, here we go. I found it. It's in 2521. 2521. The text says that it is ordered to chastity, to whose sensitivity it bears witness, says the English text. Again, not great, but you can understand what it means. The text in Latin says, puritas postulat pudorem. So purity postulates pudicity, right? Hic temperantia est pars integralis. So it's an integral part of temperance. Pudor intimitatem preservat personae. Yeah, look, it explicitly uses like our whole part, like terminology as well. Pudor intimitatem preservat personae. Okay, so the text says that it protects, modesty protects the intimate center of the person. Kind of weird. The text really says that pudicity preserves the intimitatem, the intimacy, I guess, of the person. Indicant reactionem develandi id quod occultum debet manere. I love this quote. So it indicates the rejection of the unveiling, develandi, right? The unveiling of that which is owed, debet, that which is owed, hiddenness, occultum. So real purity causes the hiding of something because it's owed to be hidden, right? Next line. Ad castitatem ordinatur, cuius etiam testator circumspectionem. Okay, so this line is the one that says it is ordered to chastity, to whose sensitivity it bears witness. But our text here says testator, right? It bears witness, or it testifies to circumspection. Now, by the way, when it says it's ordained to chastity, it's ordained to chastity, and it testifies to the circumspection of chastity. We've just been told in this text, and we will further be told in this text, that this is a particular, distinctively Christian reality, right? That the chastity which is being discussed here is not a merely natural chastity, but a chastity motivated by the Holy Spirit, and which is distinctive concretely in some way. And so what the text is telling us is something like really cool, because what it's saying is that we shouldn't conceive of continence, pudicity, and decency as things which are like merely natural for us. We should conceive of them as bearing witness to the Christian faith. We should treat our continence as one of the principal ways by which we bear witness to what's been given to us by Christ, and that's exactly what St. Paul is talking about in the verse where he says, "Let your modesty be shown before all." Why? Because the source of your joy is not from any of those things which you're moderating your use of. the source of your joy is something higher than any of those, right? And so
Yeah.
we reveal the true dignity of man, meaning we reveal the dignity which we only know by revelation, and that dignity is that we are called through Jesus Christ's passion, his life, passion, death, and resurrection to the beatific vision.
Mm.
Super awesome.
That
Yeah.
is very awesome. But it's only one paragraph in the catechism, so it must not be that important.
Yeah, real. Except it only reads as relevant to one paragraph in the catechism in the English version. That's the
Dude, the
thing. Like,
Latin version, I'm very surprised how much of our traditional language in moral theology it's actually using, and how many of like
yeah,
literally 99% of the people, well, more than that, since it's the freaking catechism, like 99.9% of people using it cannot even understand when it says things like integral part, what it actually means by that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, uh, basically, if you look at the purity section, it's 2520 to 2527. All eight of those paragraphs are like interwoven directly. So if somebody says, "Oh, there's only one part that talks about clothing," and all it says is that modesty inspires the choice of one's clothing. Yeah, real. And then everybody points towards 2524, which says the forms taken by modesty vary from culture to culture, but everywhere modesty exists as a presensio or intuition of the spiritual dignity proper to man. It is born with the awakening of consciousness of being a subject. Teaching modesty to children and adolescents means awakening in them respect for the human person. That's what it says. So people take this one thing that reads like very relativistically and they run with it, but then it explains exactly what it means. So it says that we need a purification of the social climate. Well, if modesty standards are completely relative, how could there be a purification of custom? Okay. Then it makes another point. Moral permissiveness rests on an erroneous conception of human freedom, etc., etc. So we have another point here. Then it mentions that in 2527, the good news of Christ, 25, bonum Christi nuntium, right? So the gospel, it says that it renews the life and culture of fallen man, combats and removes error and evil flowing from the ever present attraction of sin, never ceasing to purify and elevate the morality of peoples. So that doesn't sound like absolute relativism anymore at all. Uh, it takes the spiritual qualities and endowments of every age and nation, and with supernatural riches causes them to blossom from within, fortifying, completing, and restoring them in Christ. Just before that, there is a text. There's a text that mentions odierni moris. This is 2523. It says there is a modesty of feelings as well as the body, etc., etc. Modesty inspires a manner of life, making it possible to resist the allurements of, the English says, fashion and the pressures of prevailing ideologies. The Latin says, qui permittit resistere sollicitationibus odierni moris. So the mores of the day, like today's mores, today's customs, et impulsibus ideologiarium dominantium, and the impulses of dominant ideology. So again, like none of this sounds like the sort
Yeah,
of
but
relativism
you
that
don't get
we're
it.
hearing.
If it's like brown people who are islanders, then that's actually not like corrupted practices. That's only talking about the mean capitalist.
Yeah, well,
It's only talking about
that's the
Western. It's
thing.
only talking about Western ideologies, Hassan. Do not forget that, okay? Just let the native women be, okay? Okay, Hassan, just let them be. Is that Are you still there, Hassan? Oy vey, did he die? I think Hassan might have died. It's so over. Well, either way, this was going to be the end of the stream, anyways. Unfortunately, Hassan has died. Let's hope that he is not dead for forever. Oh, phone died. But yeah, I was gonna leave anyways. Game over. But I will put Hasan's Discord right on the screen. If you need to contact him because you want to work or help with TavNet or anything else that he does, you can contact him. And yeah, that's all that I have. And I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Pope Benedict XVI said that mental prayer is an ordinary means that enables the disciple of Jesus to live in intimacy with the divine teacher. Yet, how does one engage in mental prayer? One of the greatest masters of the spiritual life was Saint Ignatius of Loyola. In the 19th century, a certain Jesuit priest decided to write a complete guide to mental prayer, patterned on the works of Saint Ignatius. Check out this work on Amazon, completely typeset under the title A Brief Guide to Mental Prayer According to the Mind of Saint Ignatius.